talking about these states such as, well, you tell us, starting with Iran.
Well, Iran, North Korea, and China. And Juliet, you know, what I've been saying too is if you look at it in depth, they're really connected. We've read a lot lately, heard a lot lately about Iran and that ever-growing nuclear threat that's facing the Israelis. My big concern is not only their nuclear threat, but how they would deliver those nuclear weapons. And it's a missile they've worked on for a long time called the Shahab missile. But when you look at it, surprise, surprise, it's the same missile as the Taepodong missile over in North Korea. And we remember when Kim Jong-il was alive, it seemed like every few months he would have a missile test. That was the missile he was firing, always trying to lessen its weight and extend its range. And so the North Koreans and the Iranians have been in bed for a long time, going back to the early 1980s, where Iran has actually funded the missile development efforts of North Korea in terms of cash and oil payments in exchange for that technology. And then when we peel it back even further, surprise, surprise again, we see Chinese subcomponents as part of that technology. So that's my big concern, is that delivery mechanism, be it a Shahab missile or Taepodong missile, that could deliver a nuclear warhead or a biological warhead. And when you take that and then you throw China into the equation and the fact that their military is increasing, and then the cyber threat, which I think is probably the number one or number two threat facing us today, is that cyber threat, and they're the main culprits.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, right now we're seeing more and more attacks, and we saw there's an article today about an attack on one of the CIA's computer systems. We saw one a couple of weeks ago where a congressional website was attacked. My concern is, what if a power grid is attacked? We know that the Pentagon was actually attacked a couple of years ago, and the origin of that attack was China. But Julia, here's where they're getting smart. Not only are they attacking our government computer systems, but now what they're doing is they're going to people, contractors, who are working on sensitive and classified programs for our government and attacking those systems as a way to go around the government and to get access to that sensitive and classified information. So this is a very, very big threat.
Well, obviously we are concerned about this threat, and, you know, as people go about their day, we don't think, you know, we live here in New York City. I mean, I remember just even a few years ago, you know, still going through the Lincoln Tunnel, I'd worry about, the terrorist attack. Kind of we're a little bit complacent these days. And thinking about Iran and China and North Korea, a little bit far off, and I think in a lot of folks' minds. One of the big concerns, though, is that you feel that the defense cuts are going to be a real problem, and I think a lot of folks agree with you.
Well, they are. You know, the Obama administration, Juliet, has announced $489 billion in defense cuts, and they acknowledge that we will no longer be able to fight what we used to call an MRC, a military regional conflict. We won't be able to fight two of them simultaneously anymore, just one. But here's the big problem. Not only those cuts, but because of the sequestration and the failure of the super committee, we're looking at over $500 billion in cuts as well that could be added to this if action is not taken this year. My concern is when you add the $489 billion with the $500 or so billion, I don't think we're going to be able to fight one war successfully. It really starts to cut the military. You're not cutting fat, you're cutting bone and muscle. And even President Obama's own Secretary of Defense, Leon Panetta, says we can't have those sequestration cuts. So I believe that President Obama needs to listen to his own Secretary of Defense and make this a priority.
Well, you know, look, a statement, words of wisdom coming from somebody, and I'll tell you who it is right now in just a second, but the U.S. has never, quote, gotten it right when it comes to predicting the next conflict. That comes from former Defense Secretary. Go ahead. I'll let you break the news.
I believe that's former Secretary Gates. I think it was a speech he gave a year or so ago.
Yes, you're right. You know, those are
that
words.
Says it all.
That says it all. That says it all.